In the chaos of World War II, soldiers faced dangers that went far beyond the battlefield. It wasn't just bullets and bombs. It was hunger, freezing nights, disease, and the sheer unpredictability of survival far from home. What kept these men alive wasn't always sheer force or advanced weaponry. Often it came down to small, ingenious tricks, methods so effective they were passed down in whispers and sometimes marked, classified in military records. These weren't just battlefield tactics. They were the quiet, clever solutions that meant the difference between life and death. And here's the most intriguing part. Many of these tricks are just as useful today. Whether you're a camper, homesteader, history lover, or simply curious about the forgotten skills of the past, you'll discover that these wartime survival methods are far more than relics. They're timeless, practical, and shockingly relevant. Let's step back into those years when innovation was born out of desperation and necessity, and uncover the methods soldiers used to endure the impossible. In the field, disease was as lethal as enemy fire. Dysentery, typhus, and trenchfoot claimed thousands. Soldiers were given a special bar of carbolic soap, dark red, strong-smelling, and deadly to bacteria. It wasn't just for washing hands. Men used it to clean wounds, sterilize tools, and even disinfect water containers. It was so valuable that losing a bar could mean weeks of misery or worse. Today, the concept survives in antibacterial soaps and medical disinfectants. But back then, it was a soldier's silent shield against invisible killers. Imagine being deep in enemy territory, needing a hot meal but unable to light a visible fire. The solution was astonishingly simple. Soldiers took an empty tin can, punched holes along the sides, and placed a candle inside. The metal trapped the heat and shielded the flame from wind, creating a covert stove. Bread could be toasted, water warmed, and canned rations heated, all without producing a column of smoke to give away their position. It's a trick still used by survivalists and bushcrafters today. Coffee wasn't just a drink. It was really an emotional lifeline, you know. Troops would often reuse coffee grounds 2 or even 3 times just to stretch their supply. But here's the secret. They sometimes mixed in toasted barley or chicory to keep the brew strong. This not only gave warmth, but also kept spirits up during those long, cold watches. Commanders understood that morale was kind of a weapon in itself, and protecting a soldier's ability to feel human, even for just a few minutes, was really as important as ammunition. When clean water wasn't available, some soldiers used a method that, well, sounds strange, but actually worked in desperate moments. A loaf of dense, dark bread was crumbled into a cloth and used as a sort of crude filter. Water poured through it would lose much of its sediment and visible impurities. While it didn't kill pathogens, it was a critical first step before boiling or chemical treatment. In survival terms, making unsafe water drinkable, even partially, could keep someone alive long enough to find better solutions. Even non-smokers carried cigarettes. In occupied territories, a single cigarette could be traded for food, medicine, or even vital intelligence. In tense moments, cigarettes were also used to distract, offered to enemy soldiers or prisoners as a gesture, buying precious seconds to act. The military never officially endorsed this use, but accounts from veterans confirm that tobacco was as much a tool as it was a vice. It wasn't glamorous, but the sewing kit, sometimes sewn into a uniform lining, was a soldier's quiet hero. In the cold, a ripped coat could mean frostbite. In the jungle, a torn mosquito net could lead to malaria. Soldiers stitched wounds in clothing, reinforced boots, and even used thread to improvise fishing lines. The smallest pouch of needles and thread could extend the life of vital gear by months. When matches were damp and lighters failed, soldiers turned to a method learned from farmers and sailors. They carried strips of cloth soaked in engine oil or animal fat, stored in tins. Even in rain, these would catch a spark and burn long enough to ignite wet wood. It was dirty, smoky, and smelled terrible, but it worked every time. In the frozen winters of the Ardennes or the Russian front, this trick could mean warmth and survival. Rations often spoiled in the humid jungles of the Pacific. Salt, already a key dietary need, was used to preserve meat and fish caught on the march. Soldiers rubbed it into leather gear to keep mold at bay and even packed it into boots overnight to draw out moisture. A handful of salt was worth its weight in gold in places where the air itself seemed to rot everything it touched. Uniform buttons had a habit of disappearing at the worst possible times. In the absence of replacements, soldiers rolled a piece of wet bread into a ball, pressed it flat, and poked 2 holes through the centre. Once dried in the sun, it became surprisingly durable, enough to keep a jacket closed through days of movement. It was a small, almost laughable fix, but in war, every ounce of comfort and order mattered. Perhaps the most ingenious survival trick came in the form of an innocent deck of playing cards. In some cases, these were special issue. When the cards were peeled apart after being dampened, they revealed sections of a detailed escape map printed inside. Prisoners of war used these to navigate back to friendly territory. The trick was so effective that post-war it was adapted for Cold War espionage. The brilliance of these World War II survival methods lies not just in their practicality, but in the mindset behind them. Soldiers didn't have the luxury of endless supplies or modern gear. They worked with what they had, innovating under pressure, often with the simplest of tools. These were not survival hacks for convenience. They were lifelines forged in the harshest conditions imaginable. In a world where technology dominates, these wartime lessons remind us that ingenuity, adaptability, and resourcefulness remain the most powerful tools of all. The same candle in a tin stove that kept a soldier alive in 1944 can still keep a camper warm in 2025. The same improvised water filter could serve in a disaster when modern infrastructure fails. History is full of grand strategies and famous battles, but it's often the small, almost invisible acts of survival that truly shape the outcome. These are the skills worth remembering, preserving, and, when necessary, using again. If you found these hidden pieces of history as fascinating as the battles themselves, make sure to subscribe to In the Beginning and share this video with fellow history enthusiasts. The past has more to teach us than we realize, and some of its best lessons are still classified in plain sight.